Well, hello everyone, Phil here. Hey, I just wanted to do a quick video on the origin of the term pioneer that Jehovah's Witnesses use to describe a full-time door-to-door preacher, which currently means you pledge to spend at least 70 hours each month preaching door-to-door on the streets to folks. So where does that term come from exactly? Well, I know as a kid, I always just assumed that it came from the pioneers who moved out west in the covered wagons in the 1800s. I always loved the Little House on the Prairie books by Laura Ingalls Wilder, and so I liked that idea. And then, too, I think it was around that time that the computer game, the Oregon Trail, was just getting real popular. And so my school had started to get some computers in, and that was like the only game on the computers was Oregon Trail. And it was really fun back in the day. So yeah, I just always assumed that was what the society meant by a pioneer because that's kind of what the pioneers were doing. They were moving to these territories and states that were more or less untouched and settling there. And that's kind of what witness pioneers were doing, was going into these untouched territories and starting the work there. But interestingly, as you read more about the early years of the Watchtower organization, you find that that is not quite accurate. And the word pioneer was actually chosen for its military connotation. So that's what I wanted to talk about for a minute. Now, in the past, the society has definitely used military terminology from time to time to describe roles and actions that it does. For example, in the years of Charles Russell, the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses, they had this term for certain Bible students who didn't live near any congregation, and they called them sharpshooters. So, for example, in the Proclaimer's book, it says, sharpshooters, isolated publishers, were to devote at least 2 hours per week to witnessing. And then, too, we can see this is from the 1910 Convention Report book, and this is the transcript of a talk by Charles Russell. And he says, I guess you are not all coal porters, though you are all sympathizers with the coal porter work. And I presume all the rest that are not coal porters are what we call sharpshooters, looking for special opportunities to slip in some of those keys for Bible study. So that was the term they used back in the day. Now, being a sharpshooter in the world has changed terms these days, and snipers are what sharpshooters are called nowadays. So probably a good thing that the society dropped that term. But, under the direction of the Society's second president, Joseph Rutherford, many terms changed in the Watchtower Society. The name of the religion itself changed from Bible students to Jehovah's Witnesses, and he also introduced a number of these military terminologies. So, for example, congregations started being called companies. Publishers were organized into divisions, and the term for full-time preachers, which had been coal porters, changed to pioneer. So what is the military connotation of the word pioneer? That's not very common knowledge, I think. But actually, the word pioneer has existed since back in the 1600s. And it started originally as a word for a foot soldier in the army. And then eventually it acquired a more specialized meaning. And so the eventual meaning was similar to what today are called combat engineers in the military. So these are soldiers who help armies move forward into new territory, especially by building things. So building the bridges, the roads, physical structures that will enable the rest of the army to traverse that territory more easily. Around World War II is when you see the term pioneer kind of change to combat engineer in the military. And before that, most countries, including the United States and Canada and lots of countries, had multiple pioneer battalions that were organized in their armies. So when folks who moved out west in the covered wagons, when we call them pioneers, that's actually taken from the military term pioneer and not the other way around, as I would have assumed. Now, the Watchtower Society eventually dropped most of the overtly military terminology, but for some reason, pioneer has stuck around. And it's interesting, in a March 1st, 82 Watchtower study article, they explained more about the origin of the word and really embraced the military overtones of the term pioneer. So the title of this study article was Jehovah's Valiant Army of Full-Time Fighters. So you can maybe see the direction this article is going. but we'll just check out a couple paragraphs here. So let's check out paragraph 4 here under the subheading Pioneer Warriors in a Spiritual Army. Why is pioneer an appropriate designation for Jehovah's Witnesses who can be full-time preachers? The word originally had a military connotation, relating to a soldier, though not an ordinary foot soldier. It connoted a military engineer, one who preceded the main body and built bridges, roads, and trenches. Hence, to pioneer came to mean to prepare or open the way, and a pioneer was one who took the lead, forging ahead in the face of odds or opposition, as the early settlers of the North American West did. The term suggests an individual who is intrepid, one who presses ahead until his goal is realized. What an apt description this is for those who are self-sacrificing soldiers of Christ Jesus full-time. Paragraph 5 starts, all true Christians can be likened to soldiers who are involved in spiritual warfare. So it's kind of interesting in this article that instead of downplaying the military overtones of the term pioneer and playing up the settlers of the Old West connotation, they really lean into the military sense of the word. And that sort of reflects there's this interesting fine line that Jehovah's Witnesses walk, that they are neutral. They don't serve in any armies of the world, but that doesn't mean that they're pacifists. They completely believe in war and soldiers going to battle and killing other armies, but they only do that when God is the general. So that's kind of the nuanced stance there. As the article continues, it goes on to highlight even more firmly the parallels between military pioneers and watchtower pioneers. So let's check out paragraph 7 here. It says, among those millions of successful Christian fighters is an advance corps, the full-time ministers. Many of them truly have pioneered in the sense of having gone ahead of the main body, opening the way. Often, pioneers have gone into territories where the good news of God's established kingdom has never been preached. Some pioneer missionaries have gone to foreign lands where they have had to learn strange customs and difficult languages, facing inconveniences, diseases, and demonic religions. They have built bridges across all these barriers, made inroads with spiritual weapons, and established bridgeheads that have developed into strong congregations. They have opened the way into areas where a few years later, a whole army of Christian warriors preaches Christ's message of spiritual liberation. And paragraph 8 starts, last year there were, on the average, 151,180 of these full-time fighters in the worldwide field each month. All are volunteers, and there are no mercenaries. So yeah, it's really interesting to see them lean into this idea of building roads and bridges that armies will later use to invade the land, just like military pioneers do. They mentioned there, it says there's no mercenaries. So in other words, don't even think about getting paid by the society for your preaching work. And it says they're all pioneers. You know, this is 82, so the draft in the US had just ended 6 years earlier, which, as I've mentioned in the earlier videos about the draft, that put a big dent in the ability of the society to recruit young guys to work at Bethel. So clearly that that whole concept was still in the mind of the society years later. So anyways, I'll do a video down the road talking about the military connotations of other terms that witnesses use, but I just thought it was really interesting how the term pioneer for the Watchtower Society clearly is meant in the military sense, which is something that I just never had heard in all the years I pioneered and went to pioneer school and had meetings with pioneer meetings with the circuit overseers. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that, and thanks for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to, and we'll catch you all in the next video. Take care now.